Chapter 216, Sweet Reunion. 9:45. Sister Xiao saw that the atmosphere was not high and everyone looked a little tired. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5 to eat, drink, and play with their phones. No one sang anymore. She stood up and clapped her hands. It's getting late, let's stop here today. No one had any objections. They greeted each other as they stood up and picked up their things and walked out. There were a few who were still playing with their phones and seemed to be looking at their friends' movements. Cheng Muze had left half an hour ago. Vice Manager Chen had paid the bill with the money that everyone had paid. He was standing at the door and talking to Ron Mian with a smile. Jian Yun called Huo Liancheng. The other side quickly picked up. Is it over? Yes, where are you? Jian Yun asked. I'm almost there. Wait for me in the hall. I'll be right down. Huo Liancheng's voice was low. Okay. Jian Yun hung up the phone and sat there in a daze. She felt a little awkward in her heart. Would her relationship with Huo Liancheng really change because of tonight? Why aren't you leaving? Who are you calling? Why are you smiling so flirtatiously? Wu Wenjing saw that Jian Yun was still sitting there. She could not help being very surprised when she just came back from the washroom. Jian Yun did not really like lively people. In the past, when she could avoid such occasions, she would always try to avoid them. If she could not, she would also think of ways to leave first. Tonight, she could sit until this time and not leave. It really surprised her. Friend. Jian Yun rolled her eyes at Wu Wenjing. She immediately stood up and picked up her bag and coat. Jian Yun, how are you going back? Do you want me to give you a lift? When Ron Mian saw Jian Yun coming over, she immediately waved her hand and called out to her. No need. I will go home by car. Jian Yun smiled. She wanted to avoid these acquaintances, so she deliberately dawdled behind them for a long time. Ron Mian did not ask much. She just smiled and went downstairs with Sister Xiao and the others. Wu Wenjing rolled her eyes. She stayed behind and hooked her arm around Jian Yun's shoulder. She smiled and asked, What friend? Tell me and see if I know him or not. Jian Yun glanced at her with the corner of her eye and looked around. Seeing that everyone had left, she said seriously, Of course you know him. Wu Wenjing's interest was immediately piqued. Is it a man or a woman? Is it a former university classmate? A man. Jian Yun shook her head and whispered into Wu Wenjing's ear, It's not a classmate. It's Huo Liancheng. Wu Wenjing was stunned for a moment as if she was digesting Jian Yun's words. After a moment, her eyes widened and her mouth opened wide. Seeing that she was about to cry out, Jian Yun quickly covered her mouth with her hand. Shh! You guys are really together? Wu Wenjing took a long time to regain her voice, but she was so excited that she was panting. Jian Yun did not know how to answer, so she could only pout. Sort of. What do you mean count? Wu Wenjing was dissatisfied. I don't know what to say. It is too complicated. I will tell you when I have the chance in the future. Jian Yun looked at her phone. She had already walked out of the room. She stood on the second floor and could see the hall on the first floor. She thought about it and sent Huo Liancheng a message. There are too many people in the hall. I will wait for you at the bus stop opposite. How are you going back? Come with us. Jian Yun looked up and saw that Wu Wenjing was still in shock. She could not help poking her in amusement. Why are you in a daze? Jian Yun, actually there are some things I think I have to tell you. Wu Wenjing was conflicted and wondered if she should tell her about Huo Liancheng, adding her WeChat privately and asking her about some of Jian Yun's hobbies. Did you do anything to let me down? Jian Yun looked at Wu Wenjing from the corner of her eyes. She knew Wu Wenjing and knew that she would say that. There must be something hidden from her. Wu Wenjing looked at Jian Yun and hesitated for a long time. In the end, she did not dare to say anything. With Jian Yun's temper, if Jian Yun knew that she betrayed her, she would also take a screenshot of Xu Haiyang's reply to Jian Yun and show it to Huo Liancheng. Jian Yun would definitely fly into a rage. At that time, not only would she ignore her, she would probably argue with Huo Liancheng when she returned. Forget it. It was better not to talk about it. Wu Wenjing comforted herself. She only did this because Huo Liancheng was very interested in Jian Yun, because she felt that Huo Liancheng and Jian Yun were more compatible than Xu Haiyang. This is a little complicated. I can't tell you 1 or 2 sentences. I will tell you when I have the chance. Wu Wenjing used Jian Yun's words to back away. She really did not dare to say it. Hey! Jian Yun was speechless. You're so anxious. Wu Wenjing's feet were smeared with oil and she wanted to run away. I won't tell you anymore. I will go back to Sister Xiao's car and leave first. Jian Yun and Wu Wenjing had not seen each other for a while. This fellow had been doing business on WeChat recently and did not come out to play. It was not easy for them to meet. She had a lot of things to ask her, but Wu Wenjing ran away so quickly. Call me if you need anything. Wu Wenjing ran downstairs and made a phone call to Jian Yun while waving to Sister Xiao who was at the door. Sister Xiao, give me a lift. Jian Yun shook her head. She looked at her phone and Huo Liancheng replied to her. Wait for me for 10 minutes. Jian Yun slowly went downstairs and crossed the road. She walked towards the stop sign on the opposite side. Cars came and went by the road. Someone saw her, a beautiful girl, waiting for the car alone late at night, so they stopped the car to talk to her. Jian Yun did not care at all. These people were just looking for excitement. Seeing that there was no opportunity, this place was full of surveillance, and they did not dare to commit crimes. They did not get her response, and they left. It was already late April, and the smell of spring was thick, but it was still a little cold at night. Jianyun was wearing a dress today, and only a thin sweater on the outside. She stood by the roadside at 10 o'clock at night. It was a little cold. She crossed her arms and regretted coming out early. Just as she was thinking about whether she should go back to the clubhouse hall, Jianyun suddenly felt warm. She looked down and saw that she was wearing a coat. It was a man's suit jacket. It had a very familiar smell and a strong male hormonal smell. Jianyun immediately turned around and saw that Huo Liancheng had come behind her at some unknown time. He had a black shirt and 2 buttons on his collar. The yellow light from the street lamps fell on his face and gave a layer of gentle light to his cold and solemn expression. You. Jianyun wanted to say that you had come, but just as she opened her mouth, she saw darkness in front of her eyes. Huo Liancheng lowered his head and suddenly kissed her. Jianyun was stunned. This was a big road. Why was he kissing her here? Jianyun blinked her eyes and wanted to push him away, but his kiss was as fierce as always, making her unable to resist. Jianyun's face turned red. The hand that was placed on his chest unconsciously relaxed and gradually changed to hugging his thin waist. His body was very warm and there was an aura that made her feel at ease. She slowly closed her eyes and raised her head to bear his kiss. Huo Liancheng felt Jianyun's obedience and was delighted. He hugged her even more tightly and could not suppress the desire in his heart at all. Chapter 217, Accident. In the middle of the night, the traffic was not as fast as it was in the day, but there were still a lot of people, but it was common for men and women to kiss on the side of the road, so it did not surprise the passers-by. Not far ahead was an intersection. The red light was on, and the traffic stopped to wait for the green light. At this time, the windows of one of the cars were lowered. Someone looked towards the bus station. Look, someone is kissing by the roadside. Then, on the bus, someone snorted, What's there to be surprised about? Isn't this a common occurrence? But handsome men and beautiful women aren't common. Shu Haiyan, quickly take a look. This young lady is really pretty. Why does this man look a little familiar? That person kept staring. Shu Haiyan, who was sitting in the passenger seat, also looked in the direction the man was pointing at. When he looked, he was first stunned, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. He suddenly wiped his eyes and then he was completely stunned, as if he had been struck by lightning. The girl kissing the man on the roadside was actually Jianyun. Shu Haiyan, what are you doing? This is the crossroad. You can't get off the car. It's too dangerous. The man in the back seat saw Shu Haiyang suddenly open the door and get out of the car without warning. He was shocked and shouted after Shu Haiyang. However, Shu Haiyang could not hear anything. He could only see the beautiful figure that was snuggling in the arms of the tall man. He suddenly rushed towards the direction of the bus stop. No, he could not bear it anymore. The girl he loved so much in his dreams was in the arms of another man. How could he bear it? Jianyun was his. Since she was 13, he had fallen in love with her. It had been more than 10 years. How could she abandon him? Shu Haiyang could not see anything in his eyes. The man who got off the car behind him saw car speeding over. He shouted in shock, Be careful. Before the man could finish his sentence, the car had already hit Shu Haiyang. There was an ear-piercing sound of brakes. In an instant, everything was silent. However, what happened here did not affect Jianyun and Huo Liancheng. They were kissing passionately. In the end, Jianyun was almost out of breath. She knocked on Huo Liancheng's shoulder, indicating that she was feeling a little uncomfortable. Only then did Huo Liancheng reluctantly let go of her. Let's go, he said. Jianyun nodded. Her face was so red that it almost bled. She looked at his handsome face, which had become much gentler in the night. His beautiful big eyes were watery and shy. Huo Liancheng held back his urge to kiss her again. He held her hand and walked down the platform. A car stopped in front of them. Huo Liancheng opened the door. After Jianyun got into the car, he helped her take off her coat. Can you not be so gentle and considerate? I am not used to it. Jianyun pouted. Then do you like me to be rude? Huo Liancheng got into the car and hugged Jianyun. He raised his eyebrows and asked. A light laugh came from the driver's seat. It was Cheng Mu's. He did not look back but smiled. Making love in front of a bachelor. Aren't you going too far? Jianyun did not expect Cheng Mu's to be here. Her face immediately turned red. She suddenly thought that Cheng Muze must have seen the scene of her kissing Huo Liancheng by the roadside. She could not help but want to find a hole to hide in. Shut up and drive. With Huo Liancheng's order, Cheng Muze smiled and said, Got it. The car glided out smoothly. However, before they could drive for a while, Jianyun noticed that there were many cars in front of them. There were also traffic police standing there to maintain order. It seems like there was an accident. Someone suddenly got out of the car and was hit by the car behind. Cheng Muze said, Is it serious? Jianyun heard him and suddenly felt her heart tighten. She also lowered the window and looked outside. I don't know, but it was a red light at that time. The car behind shouldn't be fast. Cheng Muze put one hand on the window and said while looking outside, There's blood on the ground. Don't look. Huo Liancheng hooked his arm around Jian Yun's neck and raised the window again. There was the sound of an ambulance in the distance. The traffic police evacuated the surrounding cars and people. Cheng Muzhe drove away as well. Just as Huo Liancheng hooked Jian Yun's head to the side, under the streetlight, the person who was lying on the ground struggled to sit up. Xu Heian held his head and felt dizzy and sore all over. It was as if he had been crushed by a car. Don't move the wounded. The ambulance arrived at this time. A doctor ran out of the car and checked Xu Heian's body with the nurse. However, Jian Yun was already far away in the car. She only saw the lights flashing in the rearview mirror. At the same time, at a distance away from the intersection, there was a car parked there. It seemed to be waiting for someone, but the people in the car were all silent. They were so shocked that they could not speak. That man just now was the man who kissed Jian Yun. Is he General Manager Huo? Vice Manager Chen's voice was trembling. He wiped the cold sweat on his head. It took him a long time to remember how to organize the sentence. I think so. The one who answered him was a young woman with delicate makeup, but only average looks. This woman was also an employee of the Human Resources Department. Her name was Ma Jingjing. So General Manager Huo and Jian Yun are a pair. No wonder he came to our room tonight and sang. The other man, who was about 30 years old, had an expression that turned out to be like this. No wonder Special Assistant Chung ordered that song because of love. It was specially ordered for General Manager Huo and Jian Yun. It's just that Jian Yun was too insincere. It's fine if she rejected it, but in the end, she made us, Li Hui, make a fool of ourselves. Ma Jingjing looked at Li Hui, who was sitting in the back seat with her. Her eyes were full of sympathy and also a little gloating. Li Hui originally did not feel anything, but after being mentioned by Ma Jingjing, her face could not hold on anymore. Indeed, if Jian Yun had answered the microphone at that time, Vice Manager Chen would not have asked her to sing with General Manager Huo. In the end, he was ignored. It made her so embarrassed. All right. Tonight we will pretend that we did not see anything. We can't blame Jian Yun for this. Don't talk nonsense. Unless you don't want to do anything in Ming's, anyone who dares to spread what happened tonight will know who President Huo is. Don't tell me you don't know and just wait to be eliminated. Vice Manager Chen saw that Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng had already left in the car. He calmed his heart and said immediately. After all, he had worked hard in the Mings for more than 10 years. He was also someone who had some experience and eyes. After thinking about it, he understood that Huo Liancheng did not reveal his relationship with Jian Yun directly. There must be a reason behind it. So if anyone publicized it for him in advance, it would be just as Jian Yun said. Offending Huo Liancheng, he would be able to wipe out the whole team in a matter of minutes. However, he still wanted to match Ruan Mian and Huo Liancheng tonight. Later, he mentioned Li Hui. He wondered if Manager Huo would mind. Chapter 218 Respect Her. The other 3 men in the car exchanged looks of relief. However, Ma Jingjing was still not convinced. Jian Yun doesn't look that good. She has been in Ming's corporation for many years, and no one has noticed her. How did she deal with President Huo? Who said that? The man called Zheng Zikai rolled his eyes. Jian Yun is publicly acknowledged as a beauty, okay? In the past, when she kept a low profile and always wore black-rimmed glasses, we said that if she took off her glasses, she would definitely amaze everyone. Is she that good-looking? Why didn't I know? Ma Jingjing curled her lips, her face full of disdain. There are many things you don't know. Otherwise, why would General Manager Huo choose her instead of you? The man seemed to dislike Ma Jingjing, and his words were not polite at all. Zheng Zikai, you want to die. Ma Jing slapped him. All right. Chen Guang said he took Sister Xiao's car and left. Stop arguing and leave. Vice Manager Chen took the call and put down his phone to start the car. In the end, he did not forget to remind them. Remember, don't spread what you saw tonight. You have to pretend that nothing happened. I know. Vice Manager Chen, let's talk about it. What kind of person is General Manager Huo? He's probably just like those rich people who chase after pretty girls when they see them. If they get tired of it, they break up. Ma Jingjing stroked her long hair and glanced at Zheng Zikai. She sneered and said, only a shallow woman like Jian Yun would fall for it. Your tone is sour. A man like President Huo is more handsome than celebrities and has more money. I have never heard of him having any scandals. If I am a woman, he can pursue me. Even if he is just playing with me, it is worth it. Zheng Zikai did not like Ma Jingjing. He wanted to argue with her every sentence. Death under a peony flower, and being a ghost is also a breeze. Not only can it be described as a man, but women are also suitable. Haha. Besides, a beauty like Jian Yun might be the one President Huo pursued first. Ma Jingjing was furious when she saw Zheng Zikai going against her every sentence. Just as she was about to reply, Vice Manager Chen spoke. All right. Stop talking. If you want me to say it, it's best to pretend that you don't know anything. Li Hui, are you right? Li Hui, who had been in a daze, heard Vice Manager Chen ask her something. She could not help but smile. Yes, Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng left the scene of the car accident, but she felt a little uneasy. Huo Liancheng held her hand. What is it? Jian Yun turned to look at him. A look of confusion flashed across her face, but then she pursed her lips and smiled. It's okay. Huo Liancheng saw Jian Yun smite at him, and the memories he had forcefully suppressed these past few days surged into his heart like a tide. Hey! Someone's here. Jian Yun quickly put her hands on Huo Liancheng's chest and looked at him. Cheng Mu's was still in front of her. You can pretend that I don't exist, Cheng Mu's said with a smile. Huo Liancheng stared at Jian Yun. Jian Yun leaned back against the chair, but she insisted on shaking her head. Huo Liancheng did not want to force Jian Yun. This was the conclusion he came to over the past few days. This girl's temperament was soft on the outside and tough on the inside. She had always been soft on the inside, but not tough on the inside. Every time he got angry, it would make her more distant from him. She could not achieve the goal he wanted. Then he would change to another way to treat her. At the moment, it seemed that it was still effective. At least let him know that she did not hate him as much as he imagined. As long as he treated her gently, she would smile at him and respond to him when receptive. As for the heart he wanted, Jian Yun did not get angry when she saw Huo Liancheng being rejected. Instead, she held her hand tightly and leaned back in the chair, narrowing her eyes to rest. Jian Yun was not used to him respecting her opinion so much tonight. In the past, if he wanted to kiss her, he would not care if she was willing or not. What are you thinking about? In the silence, Huo Liancheng suddenly asked. I was wondering if the man in the car accident was okay. Jian Yun looked at Huo Liancheng's big hand and casually said, You don't know him, so why do you think so much? Huo Liancheng was unhappy. He thought Jian Yun would say that she was thinking about him. Just think about it when you are bored. Jian Yun was really bored. She was so bored that she started to play with Huo Liancheng's hands. She always knew that his hand was very beautiful. His fingers were long and slender, and his palm was thick. It was a very big hand. Her hand was clenched into a fist and placed in his palm. It could be completely wrapped up. It was a very wonderful and warm feeling. It was just that this was the first time she had touched his hand so brazenly. He was such a pampered person. How could there be a cocoon on his hand? Is my hands very fun? Huo Liancheng asked. Jian Yun played with his fingers one by one, feeling speechless. However, he thought about it. What she did meant that she no longer rejected contact with his body. Why do you have a cocoon on your hand? Jian Yun touched the calluses on Huo Liancheng's knuckles and felt that the calluses were very thick. It should have been some years. She could not help but be curious. Why can't I have calluses on my hands? Huo Liancheng held Jian Yun's hands and looked at her from the side. Do you still need to work on your own? Aren't you being served by a group of people since you were born? Jian Yun asked matter-of-factly. In her opinion, rich people all lived this kind of life. You are talking about a retard. Huo Liancheng's eyebrows twitched, and he helplessly knocked Jian Yun on the head. Ha, Sister Jian, rich people's lives are not as comfortable as the outside world thinks. That kind of situation that you mentioned will not appear in our family. Cheng Mu smiled. Do you want to work by yourselves? Going out to work? Jian Yun still did not believe it. I don't think so, but I do need to work. Once a man reaches adulthood at 18 years old, he will enter the family business. Starting from the bottom, he will not let others do his own things. Cheng Mu said. Jian Yun thought that it was right. There were some cases like this in the news, but she immediately asked Huo Liancheng, Do you want to do the same? Do you think my ability to take care of myself is bad? Huo Liancheng raised his eyebrows. Ha, Sister Jian, you don't know. Compared to us, fourth brother has lived a life that you can never imagine. Cheng Mu suddenly interrupted. Okay, drive. Huo Liancheng did not seem to want to talk about the past to Jian Yun. Jian Yun thought for a while and suddenly felt that it was a little unbelievable. I thought you guys did not have to work every day and have endless money to travel the world. At night, you can go on a cruise and have a party. There are countless beauties accompanying you. Before Huo Liancheng could finish listening, he knocked Jian Yun on the head. The kind of people you are talking about are called trash. Every family has a few and basically have no use. They can only show off their wealth. But you have to know, real aristocrats are not that shallow. Chapter 219. She's the one I'm looking for. Jian Yun nodded her head. For the first time, I feel that you are right. It is as if a truly beautiful person would never expose their pictures every day. Only those who do not have confidence in themselves would care so much about their looks. Sister Jian, are you praising yourself for being beautiful? Cheng Mu could not help laughing. Yeah. Do you think I'm not pretty? Jian Yun asked with a smile. Yes, of course I am. The first time I saw you wearing such ugly makeup, I could tell you were a beauty. If it wasn't for fourth brother getting ahead of me, I would have chased you too. Cheng Mu first complimented Jian Yun, then said regretfully, Oh, that's a pity. In fact, I had a better impression of you than him at the beginning. Jian Yun reached out and hugged the seat in front of her. She turned her head to look at Cheng Mu and also made a regretful expression. Really? When Cheng Mu heard this, he immediately became excited. Then you can dump fourth brother now. Come with me. I am much gentler than fourth brother. I won't treat you coldly all day long. I can think about it. Jian Yun looked at Huo Liancheng and nodded. At this time, Huo Liancheng's face was completely black. He hooked his arm around Jian Yun's neck and took her into his arms. He gritted his teeth and said angrily, Do you think I don't exist? Jian Yun pulled his hand away and quickly changed the topic. So it turns out that the life of rich people is not easy. Actually, I used to be envious of those who flaunted their wealth on Weibo. At that time, my dream was to be a rice worm. Do you want to be a rice worm? Huo Liancheng heard her and looked at Jian Yun seriously. I will raise you. I don't want you to take care of me. Jian Yun immediately shook her head and said, I used to be insensible, but now I won't rely on anyone. I can work, and I can take care of myself. Sister Jian, don't you know how much money fourth brother has? To reject him so decisively? Cheng Mu's could not help but interrupt. Fourth brother already said he wanted to raise you. You are the richest rice worm in the world, yet you still refuse? What does it have to do with me that he has money? Jian Yun glanced at Huo Liancheng. The light in the car was very dim. Only the street lights shone in. She could not see the expression on Huo Liancheng's face, but she could feel his burning eyes. There was more than one person who had said this to her. But money was not the standard to measure a person. Rich people did not mean that they were noble. People who did not have money did not mean that they were criminals with bad conduct. So whether he had money or not had nothing to do with whether she chose him or not. Huo Liancheng and Cheng Mu's heard this and did not speak for a moment. Both of them were deep in thought. Why did rich people who never went to any disadvantage come to Jian Yun's place and touch nails? Did she really not care about money that much? In the end, Cheng Muzi still asked, Sister Jian, have you never lived a life without money to regard money as dirt? Jian Yun immediately thought of how hard it was to save money after all these years of hard work. That night, she was humiliated by Huo Liancheng for tens of thousands of dollars. She pursed her lips and her voice turned cold. You have to ask him that. He knows best if I have ever struggled for money. Cheng Muze heard Jian Yun's tone was not right. He could not help but look at her in the rearview mirror in surprise. He thought to himself, could it be that something happened between Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng because of money? Huo Liancheng saw Jian Yun pull her hand away from his hand with a face full of resentment. His entire body was filled with coldness. He knew that she must have remembered what happened before. He immediately blamed Cheng Muzi for bringing this up for no reason. Ahem. Huo Liancheng put his hand to his lips and coughed twice to warn Cheng Muzi not to speak again. He grabbed Jian Yun's hand again. Jian Yun deliberately put her hand in her pocket and said that she would not touch his body. It's none of my business, fourth brother. Cheng Muzi saw Huo Liancheng staring at him and could not help but shrug his shoulders innocently. Jian Yun did not respond to Huo Liancheng the rest of the way. Huo Liancheng tried to hug her again and again, but she avoided him. Actually, Jian Yun was not angry. He had said those bastards, but he did apologize later. Until now, he had treated her very well. Otherwise, her impression of him would not have changed. Jian Yun did not speak because she felt a little uneasy, as if something bad had happened. Cheng Muzi drove the car into the residential area and parked it at the building where Huo Liancheng lived. Huo Liancheng got out of the car, and Jian Yun had already gotten out of the car and entered the corridor ahead of him. Fourth brother, women must be pampered. Don't be fierce. Cheng Muzi saw Huo Liancheng's cold face and kept staring at Jian Yun's back. He could not help but get out of the car and pat Huo Liancheng's shoulder, reminding him not to be cold. Don't tell anyone about the matter between me and her. Huo Liancheng said this and started to walk away. Cheng Muzi caught up with him and asked, Fourth brother, are you serious? Jian Yun walked into the elevator and turned around. When she saw that Huo Liancheng did not follow her, she came out again. She wanted to see why Huo Liancheng was so slow. Before she could reach the door of the lobby, she suddenly heard Cheng Muzi's question and stopped in her tracks. Was he serious? This was also a question that had been lingering in Jian Yun's heart. She did not dare to agree to him and did not dare to give up her heart because she was afraid that he was just playing around. Once she gave up her heart, she might be doomed. At that time, Huo Liancheng did not even turn his head and said, She is the person I am looking for. When Cheng Muzi heard these words, he was immediately stunned. Huo Liancheng looked up and found Jian Yun had turned around at some point. She was standing 2 or 3 meters away from him. She tilted her head and looked at him. He focused his eyes. He walked over and held her hand. He walked towards the elevator. Jian Yun obediently followed behind Huo Liancheng. When they entered the elevator, she asked, Am I really the person you are looking for? Huo Liancheng looked at the number on the floor and only answered after a long while. Why are you looking for me? When have we met? Jian Yun was more and more confused. These were all the questions she wanted to ask, but she could not find an opportunity. Do you want to know? Huo Liancheng turned back to look at Jian Yun. Of course. Jian Yun stared at him. Otherwise, I feel like I'm being tricked by you. Huo Liancheng did not say anything. He just looked at Jian Yun. There seemed to be a secret hidden in his dark eyes. At this time, the elevator stopped and the door opened. Huo Liancheng did not say anything. He held Jian Yun's hand and went out. Jian Yun was already used to his deep thoughts. She pressed the password and entered the house. She was about to ask again when she saw him suddenly turn around and kiss her. The kiss was like a storm. The mark that belonged to him was deeply imprinted on Jian Yun's lips. It took a long time before they separated. Do you want to know? Wu Liancheng looked down at Jian Yun's red face. Yes. Jian Yun nodded, panting. If she did not want to know, she had just pushed him away. Wu Liancheng gently stroked Jian Yun's cheeks and placed his long fingers on her slightly swollen lips. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly. I will tell you if I say you love me. Chapter 220. Say you love me. Say you love me. Wu Liancheng curled his lips and said, I'll tell you. Jian Yun's eyes twitched. She knew he would not be so easy to talk to. Then do you love me? Jian Yun looked into Wu Liancheng's eyes and asked. She did not expect Wu Liancheng's answer at all. She just felt that what he said was very annoying. He knew that their relationship had just improved a little, so she would not say that. So he just wanted to find an excuse to not tell her the truth. Love. However, what surprised Jian Yun was that Wu Liancheng admitted it directly. She saw that his eyes were deep. He was staring at her. His eyes seemed to be filled with morning light. It was so bright that it was dazzling. Jian Yun was stunned. She was prepared to refute his words, but suddenly, there was no use. She looked at Wu Liancheng in a daze. What was he talking about? He actually said he loved her? You're joking, right? You're teasing me again. Hey. Jian Yun smiled awkwardly and pushed Wu Liancheng. Let go. I want to change my shoes. I fell in love with you 6 years ago. I have found many places and finally found you. Do you think I will let go? Wu Liancheng lowered his head and whispered into Jian Yun's ear. Jian Yun suddenly felt her throat become dry. She swallowed her saliva and pulled the corner of her mouth. But, I really don't have any impression of you. I know. Wu Liancheng did not have any displeasure. He hugged Jian Yun tightly and rubbed his chin against her neck. It is normal that you do not have any impression of me. What do you mean? Jian Yun asked. The more Jian Yun thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Could it be that you looked different back then? When Wu Liancheng heard this, his tall body suddenly stiffened. He was hesitating if he should have a good talk with Jian Yun when he suddenly felt Jian Yun's hand reach his face. Why are you touching my face? Wu Liancheng asked. Is your face fake? I know, you must have plastic surgery? Jian Yun thought of this possibility and reached out to rub Wu Liancheng's face. At the same time, she pretended to be enlightened and said, I always thought it was strange. How can a man be so good-looking? His nose is so tall. Is there a prosthetic? His eyebrows are so thick. Is it planted? There are also silkworms. Could it be poric acid? As Jian Yun spoke, she pinched Wu Liancheng's nose, pinched his eyebrows, and patted his cheek. She looked left and right, and the more she looked, the more she felt that this face was too good. Are you an idiot? When Wu Liancheng heard these words, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. He flicked Jian Yun's forehead and pulled Jian Yun on his face. He grabbed her with both hands and said with a speechless expression, Let's talk about proper business, okay? I know, Jian Yun nodded. She said very seriously. So I am changing the topic. Who told you not to tell me the truth? Wu Liancheng's eyelids twitched. He pulled Jian Yun to the living room. Change your shoes. Jian Yun hurriedly kicked her shoes. She did not have time to put on her slippers and walked behind Wu Liancheng barefooted. Wu Liancheng suddenly turned around and caught Jian Yun off guard. He picked her up horizontally and carried her to the sofa with the posture of a princess. However, Wu Liancheng's attention was immediately attracted by the 6 or 7 bottles of wine lined up on the coffee table. There was even a note pasted on the bottle. Auntie, don't touch my wine. Wu Liancheng's eyelids began to twitch again. How much have you drunk these past few days? Not much, not much. Jian Yun thought that he did not want to part with his treasured wine and quickly waved her hands awkwardly to clarify, I only drink 1 cup before going to bed tonight, otherwise. Wu Liancheng did not let Jian Yun finish speaking and continued, otherwise you can't sleep because you miss me. Yes. Jian Yun heard the 3 words, cannot sleep. She nodded subconsciously, but then she realized something was wrong. She quickly put on a look of disdain. You think too much, I didn't miss you. You really did not miss me? Wu Liancheng pinched Jian Yun's chin and smiled maliciously. Then when I kissed you in the clubhouse, why were you so enthusiastic? You haven't answered my question yet. Jian Yun was a little angry from embarrassment when she found out that she was still sitting on Wu Liancheng's lap. She quickly wanted to come down. What question? My face? Do you want me to prove which part of my face I had plastic surgery with when I was young? Wu Liancheng hooked his arm around Jian Yun's waist and did not let her move. Who wants to see a picture of you when you were young? Jian Yun was just joking. If you really had plastic surgery, the gossip would have been dug out long ago. She felt uncomfortable sitting on Wu Liancheng's leg. If you don't say it, then forget it. I'm going to take a bath. This time Wu Liancheng did not stop Jian Yun. Jian Yun slid off his leg and ran into the room to get a change of clothes. When she came out, she found that Wu Liancheng was not in the living room. Jian Yun did not think much and rushed into the bathroom. She had been singing at the club. A few male colleagues in the room smoked and made her smell very bad. Jian Yun washed very quickly. A few minutes had passed and she wiped her wet hair. When she walked out of the washroom, she saw darkness in front of her eyes. Jian Yun was pushed against the wall by a force and her lips were immediately blocked. A thick and mellow fragrance of wine instantly entered her mouth. Jianyun subconsciously swallowed it. Hey. Jianyun was shocked. Was this guy addicted to kissing? How many times did he kiss her in one night? Now he actually used his mouth to feed her wine? And had he always been waiting outside the washroom? 1 cup every night? Seeing that Jianyun did not dislike him, Huo Liancheng was immediately delighted. He pointed at her nose and deliberately lowered his handsome face and said, You have tasted all the wine in my wine cabinet. Do you know how hard it is to find that wine? Is it very expensive? Jianyun was nervous. I did not think of opening it. It was just that after drinking the wine I could not hold back for a while. It's not that expensive. It's just that there are a few bottles that are treasured. I searched for a long time before finding them. Huo Liancheng looked down at Jianyun. She had just finished her bath and her long hair was long. The end of her long hair was wet and it was wet on her chest. Her face was red and her eyes were bright, like spring water. She was unbelievably beautiful. I'm sorry. Jianyun felt guilty. She pointed at her finger. He murmured, I will never touch your things again. I didn't say I wouldn't let you touch it. Huo Liancheng stroked Jianyun's face and curled his lips. It's just... Just what? Jianyun felt the roughness of his fingers, making her feel a little uncomfortable. She looked up at him. Are you willing to love me? Huo Liancheng asked. Ah! Jianyun did not expect Huo Liancheng to be so direct. She did not know how to answer him. She only felt hot air coming up to her face. She stared at him with stunned eyes. Can you give it a try? Try to love me. Huo Liancheng saw Jianyun embarrassed and embarrassed. He hugged her tightly and pressed her face against his heart.